And a very pleasant good morning, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the morning briefing here on NoFilter.net, Caffeine TV, a Degenerate Friday edition of the program. And I guess the appropriate song would be Where Do We Go From Here? We can't try to figure out if the Lions are worth 3.5 against the Green Bay Packers on the road. No trying to determine the final margin of victory of the San Francisco 49ers and the Kansas City Chiefs. No overs, no unders, no more NFL. College football's been on the shelf now for some time, ever since that Michigan victory in the national championship game, which buried a lot of people. Never get caught up in the sentiment of what everybody else is thinking. It happens, right? This is like the whole Peyton Manning-Ryan Leaf debate all over again. That's what transpired national championship game. There was every reason to believe that Michigan was the team, even when they were pounding Rutgers and playing a schedule that was so inept that you would have thought the Washington Generals were going to be their next opponent. And what was the common narrative, Lubie? Well, they haven't played anybody. Then they played Penn State. Playing Penn State in the big game of the year really is tantamount to doing nothing. It's like kissing your sister, isn't it? I mean, come on. There's not a whole lot of buzz to that, right? Because we know that Penn State is going down.
Yep.
We know that Penn State is not that good, no matter what people are telling you during the course of the regular season. That their coach, Franklin, is going to find a way to He's on our all Heimlich maneuver team. I don't know that that's fair. Is that fair? Does he really have the goods to be considered in that category? When you really look at the Penn State roster, they're right back to the old days where they had a nondescript quarterback and maybe a couple of linebackers that were going to remind you of Jack Lambert or something. But other than that, they really didn't have a whole hell of a lot, right? They were going to be a plodding running team, not very exciting. They've never been an explosive offensive team. No. And with apologies to our good friend O.J. McDuffie. But nonetheless, I mean, is that much of a distinction if you beat Penn State on your way to a national championship?
That's the funny thing is Penn State was one of those big jobs. Penn State, when it comes to a financial standpoint, if you look every year, most athletic departments are at a negative. Penn State's one of those rare ones that makes a lot of money. Like Penn State does really well, and they actually care a lot about football. So it's the kind of job, and again, it is a football-hungry area that is
because there's nothing else to do there. I mean, what are we talking about?
Pretty decent in recruiting. So no, Penn State should be a team that puts together. Look what Ohio State does. Penn State should be able to do. That's the thing. Franklin's gotten them to a nice place. Miami fans would be happy to have their school there, but they can't get over the hump. So yes, that is on Franklin, and I think your criticism is real, and I think they are a sort of a ho-hum victory at this point because when it comes to the big games, Franklin's going to let you down.
Exactly, they don't measure up. The game against Ohio State, a little bit more of a measuring stick, a bit more of a barometer, but outside of that, there were very few challenges, except that Michigan looked like they were going to lay an egg. They were flatter than a Parisian runway model in that game against Maryland. But nonetheless, the narrative then started to turn to, oh, my God, you bought into this, Lubie. You were selling this all college football season last year. For all of our sick, degenerate friends out there, you were trying to tell them that the Pac-12 was the most explosive and the best and well-rounded conference that was on the planet last year, and that Washington coming out of the Pac-12, the final days, was going to be a juggernaut. And everybody was jumping on the Washington bandwagon, and guess what? Turned out that everybody was dead wrong. In the case of the most recently concluded Super Bowl, suddenly San Francisco was going to snap out of this coma they'd been in the first couple of games of the playoffs. This is the thing that gamblers are fueled, and I am the just absolute living example of this, largely fueled by self-sabotage. Keep that in mind, fueled by self-sabotage. So you would think that people would want to take a break from all of this after the football season. There used to be one last bailout attempt, and that was the Pro Bowl. I remember listening to an overnight radio show. I used to drive to work at about 5 in the morning when I was doing morning drive radio. You were doing this also. I don't know if you were listening to the radio because it would tend to infuriate you on your way to work as you were getting ready to do a radio show.
You get frustrated.
Right? You'd listen to some other guy's show and you say, what a bunch of shit this is. I could do better than that. And then you realize, okay, you got to get up there and do it now, kid. Every day, 6 to 10 a.m. People calling in right away. Hey, Defo, what do you think about this? Not that I mind it. I mean, let's face it. I never really worked a day in my life. And, I may not have to because I was looking at my horoscope today. And it's very, very pertinent. Are you, astrology type of guy?
No, I think it's all ludicrous. My wife is a huge fan of it. My wife, I know you just do it in passing and sort of use it with gambling. My wife believes in it wholeheartedly. We'll go to she doesn't call the numbers or anything like that, but she has sat with people who read her colors and
Oh,
psychics.
really? No,
And
that's always a
so
little bit
she
scary,
doesn't
right?
lose her mind on what they say, but she will believe it and go, "Oh, that's so great." I'm like, I don't give a shit what.
Best scam in the world is, especially around Jackson Square in New Orleans. They have all these palm readers and
Yes.
tarot card readers and all these gypsies that are out there. And essentially, these are homeless people. Well, no, they all drive off in Mercedes because of the way that they operate. And my wife is a big fan of that also. So she'll have like I don't want anybody reading my palm or any of this kind of stuff. I don't need it. I already know that I'm doomed. Fueled by self sabotage. That's the theme of the show. But and the best part is at the end, there's no $10 to listen to this gypsy give you a bunch of shit. It's always well, how much do I owe you? After they tell you a bunch of flowery things and very promising things, and very seldom is it laced with gloom and doom. And the gypsy looks at you in all sincerity and says, "Whatever you think it's worth."
Yeah, I get the high.
Say, well, I thought it was worthless, man. Let's go, sweetheart. And then you feel bad. You hand a woman a 10 or a 20, and they look at you with that pathetic look, like a waiter that just got stiffed on a bad tip, right? As if you would give him the $20 on a $500 check.
Whatever you think it's worth. It's like,
Yeah,
it's 5.
yeah. I didn't think it was worth shit. What are you talking about? But I'm hoping this is worth something, because I do see tendencies in my astrological sign, and I believe there are some merits to the whole idea, even though it seems like a bunch of cockamamie stuff. But here you go, Lubie, and this is very appropriate for today. Your future is a lot brighter than you seem to think. So stop worrying and start doing the little things that in time will build up to something big. What are we doing here on Caffeine TV? We're doing the little things that we think will build up to something big. Thank you, Joe Manuel, and all of the people connected with it, the lovely Leslie, for giving us this opportunity, because it's going to be big. You won't lack for money making ideas today, but you can turn them into realities. All right. So there's a possibility there. And that's what we're talking about here on the show. It kind of inspired the entire program, because what are you going to bet on now? Now that the football season is over, you sickos, you wackos, you people that have the shakes right now, that are gargling with some kind of dilaudid concoction so that you can get through the off season in professional football. Maybe you're betting on who's going to get drafted first, but that seems to be pretty apparent, isn't it? Chicago Bears, do they take Caleb Williams and get rid of Justin Fields? Is Fields going to be lining up for the Pittsburgh Steelers? These are all things you could probably make a wager on right now. But last night, I was hit with a prop bet by our good friend Jim Sarney, former sports writer for the Sun Sentinel here in South Florida, and now with his own big column there, the Sarney Scrolls, Sports Illustrated, one of their outlets. Do they still have outlets? How do you have outlets if you don't have a main platform?
Did they end Sports Illustrated, or they just fire so many people that people in the industry are saying Sports Illustrated was ended? Because I think
I guess
still exists.
Yeah, the gig was up, though. They still have the swimsuit issue. I know that. And I think the gig was up when we found out that many of their articles were being generated by artificial intelligence.
That's the thing. Yeah, they were making fake articles. Yep.
Holy, Ron Lipsight, man. I mean, what are we talking about here? You have to figure Frank DeFord is rolling over in his grave. Can't write any more of those stories about crippled children and how they made it to the Little League fields. Unbelievable that they be driven by artificial intelligence. Who needs that? So you could bet last night on Caitlin Clark, how she was going to make the record-eclipsing basket. And I thought, wow, if you really have balls, Lubie, she only needed 7 points against Michigan, the Iowa star, Caitlin Clark. And this woman is a legitimate basketball player, I would have to say. I mean, I know you're not a big fan of women's college basketball, and I'm not really inclined. If I see a WNBA game, I'll watch a few minutes of it, but I'm not really somebody that's going to sit there and zero in on whether or not the Aces are going to repeat as champions. I don't know. I mean, and there are a couple of players that I like in the NBA or WNBA that came out of college basketball. Diana Taurasi at 50 years old. Is there a better ball player than this woman?
Is she still in? Oh, she's still in.
Sue Bird was in the WNBA for 30 years. It was like the geezers at Caesars, the WNBA. It's incredible. But they have a few players. I don't know. It was mostly the guard play of a woman that looks like she actually has all of the fundamental tools and, can execute them at a very high level. And I would have to say Caitlin Clark is in that category, no? or is she just a flat out chucker? What's the deal
From
with
what I
Caitlin
see,
Clark?
I honestly, the great players, I usually watch a little of
Yeah.
them. Like Taurasi, I watched a lot because she reminded me. And again, our friend you brought up, Sarni, likes to say men's and women's basketball are just two different sports. Look at it from that way. No,
Yes, they
they're
are two
two
different sports.
that are played two different ways. It's the
Yeah.
same fucking sport. And that's my problem with it is when I watch the men, I watch the women, it looks very different. Taurasi, and there's a compliment, but I guess it's sexist, looked like a dude. Like the way she played
She
basketball
played the game like a guy would.
looked like a guy. She was
Yeah.
smooth. She had finesse.
The footwork.
She played basketball, and again, this was an argument people would have. It's like, how good of a guy could she beat? It was like it felt like she could play some NBA dudes. And
You wouldn't want to go out there for money and be embarrassed by Diana Taurasi, no matter how good of a basketball player you thought you were on a recreational or even, yeah, I played some college ball. Yeah, right. Now you can look all this shit up. So there are a lot of liars out there.
And that was exactly. And look, Brittany Griner was another one. She played inside the post. She had a nice post game. She would dunk the ball.
But she was 8 feet tall. Yeah.
She was tall, but okay, dudes are tall. So like I could watch her because it was like.
Was she the female equivalent of the Plumleys?
No, she was legit. No,
but just because she was a woman, she looked like Will Chamberlain.
No, she had good footwork. No, she was really good, and she's good in the pros. Like outside of whatever her political insanity was.
Well, I mean, that was an unfortunate circumstance. I mean, you talk about a bad bust. It was hardly Midnight Express there, where she's got one vapor cartridge and she's going through the airport, and all of a sudden they nail her and they decide to throw her in Siberia. Incredible. She's eating like grass out of a straw. I mean, that was a rough, go. I mean, is Navalny on that note? I mean, just checked out in prison. This guy, I mean, his fate was sealed when he came back to Russia. I don't know why the guy made the move to come back to Russia. As soon as he got off the plane, it took him to, some outpost in the middle of some frozen tundra, and that was it. Never to be heard from again. That was another one of those things, like the uselessness of a hunger strike, where you go on a hunger strike. Who the fuck cares? The people that have you incarcerated, they don't care, so don't eat.
He's trying to make a stand, and there's nothing wrong with it. But he had a family. When you know you're gonna die, like what stand are you making? I don't know, but I'm not gonna question him.
His family loves him, and they embrace
the women I have watched over the years.
How do we get from Taurasi to Navalny?
I don't know how you did. I brought up Griner, and I knew you were gonna go there, and I was trying to not go there.
Oh, Griner, yeah.
And then again, it's sexist. I'm owning it.
I don't know that it is sexist, Lubie. I think it's just reality. I really do.
Look like men. I haven't been able to. I wasn't able to get into Plumlee or whatever her name is. The one.
Kelsey Plum. Yes. She's actually entertaining to watch when she's playing for the WNBA.
Into her and Clark. I've seen clips, and I know you at least brought her up. I don't know the way that she plays. It doesn't look like the ones I'm describing. It looks like the rest of them. She just shoots it far away and can make it. So maybe I'm wrong. I'm not saying I'm right. I haven't watched her. Like I haven't taken her action in at all.
Well, and action was the key there because the only reason to watch that game was to make a wager as to how the final. The record eclipsing shot would be accomplished. And I think the 3-ball, which she did make like a long 3-pointer, like a 30-footer, it was a pretty swift shot. And I think that was the lowest odds. You might have even had to lay a price that she was going to do it with a 3-pointer, which was fairly typical of what she did. But these are the kind of things that you're relegated to betting on right now. You're really going to have to get creative, people, because the NFL is king of all wagering. Without question, there's a reason that the game has become America's pastime. It's because it's the best game to bet, isn't it? NBA, how can you count on the NBA? Look what happened last night. The Milwaukee Bucks losing on the road to the Memphis Grizzlies, losing to fall to 3-7 under the great Doc Rivers. Now, that was a wager. Remember what we had proposed to everybody? Would you be willing to bet that Doc Rivers doesn't make it out of the second round with the Milwaukee Bucks? I would imagine those odds have been diminished greatly because it doesn't look like he's even going to make the postseason with the Milwaukee Bucks. You couldn't bury a franchise any more successfully than Doc Rivers has to start his tenure. And they're shrugging it off, Lubie. This is when you have to worry about people. When they're looking at reality, I mean, look what's going on the political scene. You got a guy that appears to be, and never mind that Joe Biden is senile.
Okay, we accept.
Okay, we know that. I don't care if he's wearing a diaper in the White House, in the Oval Office. It's all right as long as the guy. And I don't even care if he was getting millions of dollars from the Ukraine. At least he's not evil. At least he's not demented. At least he's not in the situation where he's telling you, "Yeah, I'm going to tell Putin to bomb everybody." What a nutbag!
That's my thing. Like, it's not like Trump isn't senile. Like,
Yeah.
Joe
You
Biden
wish he had diminished
flumps
capacities.
Biden flumps words, but then we'll do a whole speech and you can understand what he's saying. And
Somewhat.
at least when I watch him, and I'm like, I actually like, good for him, whatever. Trump does a speech, and the entire speech is incoherent. Like, it's just him
Yeah.
yelling about things. He'll literally claim he did things that were done years before he was even running for office, and it's like, why is that not more senile? Like,
I do dig the subtitles under the Biden speeches, though. It's like watching a foreign movie back in the day where you said, I don't know if I really have the patience to just read every line like that. Or, when they were superimposing subtitles, they would have like a feature on Triple G or something, and you couldn't understand a word the guy was saying at the time. And so, they had to put subtitles. Manny Pacquiao was that way.
Yes, 100%.
We have that clip from Manny Pacquiao. I don't know if we can bring it off here on the program, but if anybody can determine what the hell Manny Pacquiao was talking about. And this was a case where I was sandbagged by the publicity department. They were desperate. Pacquiao wasn't nearly as popular as he eventually became. He was just kind of establishing himself as an international star, and I think he was fighting some stiff. And I had done a lot of work with the PR people there that were trying to promote these HBO pay-per-view fights with Manny Pacquiao, and this one was an especially tough sell. So the PR people, I had taken advantage of a lot of freebie opportunities from these guys who had been sending us out to Las Vegas during the time that Tyson was incarcerated and had established a relationship, and they were sending people out for these radio rows for all of these Manny Pacquiao fights, and they begged me, Lubie. They begged me to do a radio interview. They said, hey, listen, this guy speaks perfect English. So I think I asked Pacquiao some innocuous question about who he was fighting, and he came up with this.
I never expected in that fight in against Marco Antonio Barrera, but Lidwabo, we have an opponent. I don't know what his name, but his opponent is he have I think injured on his hand, so they changed the opponent.
And I thought, wow, you're going to fight the vice president? Isn't this guy? Didn't he say Dick Cheney was going to be the opponent? Incredible. I think it took Pacquiao at a price in that fight. I don't know. It must have been getting like really prohibitive odds taking Pacquiao over Dick Cheney, the former vice president, who I guess he checked out a while ago too, right? Dick Cheney, no longer with us. He would have been better off if he was fighting Don Cheney. But where do we go? I mean, let's try to get something definitive out of this segment here. Where do we go to wager? Are you going to wager on baseball? Well, we talked about that. We have inside information that the Marlins are going to go under the season total this year, and I would be willing to make a strong wager on that. I don't care that Skip Schumacher was the manager of the year last year. Seems like a great guy. He got a lot of mileage out of a team that actually did eventually have a little bit of firepower and just enough pitching to get them through into the postseason, where they were swept in 2 games by the Philadelphia Phillies in the first round of the playoffs. Not that that's any disgrace. The Phillies were a very good postseason team the last couple of years and have plenty of ammunition themselves, but and had enough starting pitching, especially in a 2-game playoff, 2 out of 3 playoff situation. They were going to beat the Marlins one way or another. The Marlins have been kind of falling apart a little bit, but 78 is the number now. Might be 78 and a hook. I would shop around, see if you could even get 79. And then under. That one I have a lot of confidence in. But how much money is going to go up in smoke on people just chasing a bet because they need to get that feeling? It's like crack cocaine. They just have to have a wager on something. I would imagine a lot of money already went up in smoke on Tiger Woods to win the Genesis. You're getting 150 to 1 on Tiger Woods. That's tempting, isn't it?
No.
Nah, not for me.
It wasn't at all. My dad literally called me last night out of nowhere, and he's like, why? I'm like, why what, Dad? He's like, why is Tiger still playing? He shot a 72. I'm like, it's his course? I don't know. Like,
I think that's pretty good, actually. Right? Did you see that thing? Riviera Country Club? My God, you're hitting the ball like over the Pacific Palisades. Incredible, just to get to a par 3. No. I didn't think that was terrible. I like the Tigers in the game. I mean, the anticipation that he's going to win, I think maybe a little bit overblown. But I guarantee you this, that with the people that are out there and all of these phone apps and different Kevin Hart will be recommending to you that you go ahead and lay a couple of bucks on Tiger Woods to win the Masters right now, even after the 72, which 72 would not normally be anything that you would consider to be disgraceful. The leader of the tournament, though, is Patrick Cantlay, and he's 7 under par, and they're like 100 guys in between that and the +1, the Tiger. He bogeyed the final hole. But all in all, I mean, considering he hadn't played competitive golf at that level for a while, you would have to say it's fairly remarkable. It shows you what a brilliant player he really was. The real story there on the comeback, though, Tiger was coming back from ankle surgery, was this guy, Gary Woodland, who came back from a brain operation. He had a brain tumor. And he was out there, and I think he shot 1 under. So he was in Tiger's group, which is the only reason that we even know he was in the tournament, because if Tiger goes into one of those little porta-sands and passes gas, there's somebody in there analyzing it, right? You've got Dottie Pepper in there. Yeah, it really stinks in here. Back to you, Jim. And, they throw it back to Jim Nantz on the set. All right, so what do you think? What's going to be the most common wager? Is it going to be baseball? Is it going to be NBA playoffs? I guess we still have that. Would you take a shot on the Cavaliers, as we recommended maybe a month or so ago, when it didn't look like it was even remotely feasible that they would be championship contenders, the Cleveland Cavaliers? And
East is falling apart.
Normally by now people are less inclined, I would imagine, to bet hockey, but the astute hockey fans I think would have a very distinct edge over everybody else. And our local team now is the best team in the Eastern Conference.
They look great.
Yeah.
I haven't watched them at all, and I get it. Buffalo sucks.
Yeah.
But they play plenty of bad teams, and they play the good and the bad the same way. That's why they were able, as an 8 seed, to go to the Cup, because they play everyone the same. But not this year. Their offense is freaking.
They're great. Cool. I mean, they're on the precipice of breaking a long-standing NHL record. They've won 10 straight on the road. The record is 12.
When it's not like the offense 2 years ago. Remember, they led the league in scoring, but then in the playoffs, it was like a Suns offense, right, where they scored a lot, but they couldn't do it at the other end. No. They play defense. This goalie's a friggin' monster, and they were aggressive and physical as shit. Like, one end, they're not letting you score, on the other end, they're just passing it around like it's freaking the Globetrotters. I'm like, where did this come from? I'm like, this team looks really freaking good.
And probably the worst thing that you could be in the NHL is be known as a finesse team.
That's the thing.
Which they were kind of a finesse team all throughout their history. And all of a sudden they got Kachuk, and now they're just pounding the shit out of people. They didn't even play a particularly good game last night to get their 10th win on the road. So watch out, people. A team that's normally mathematically eliminated by now is distinguishing itself as not being a fluke to have made it all the way to the NHL final round last year. So pretty good stuff. All right. So good luck, everybody. Find a venue to waste your money on and tread lightly until you get to the football season, when you can bet again with confidence. Even though, I don't know, does anybody make money? I used to like having that outlet, the final get-out possibility on the Pro Bowl. I mentioned one of my favorite phone calls I ever heard. I'm driving to work, and I hear a guy on an overnight show, and he used to have this gambling confessional once in a while, like once a month. And a guy calls in. He sounds like he's totally strung out. I mean, Kurt Cobain was probably in better shape that night than this guy was, and he says, "It was Pro Bowl Sunday, and I was stuck $500,000.
Oh, no. Oh, no.
And he was unloading on a Pro Bowl. Imagine that. Betting on a Pro Bowl now. Now you're betting on a dodgeball game.
Yeah.
That's when you know you need professional help. All right. We hope we've been helpful to you here all throughout the week. And, of course, we'll crank it up again on Monday. That'll be our Peel Yourself Off the Mat Monday edition of the Morning Briefing. For Mike Lubie Lubitz, I'm Jeff DeForest. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in here on Caffeine TV and NoFilter.net.